Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research. The Sunday Roast presents 12 Stocks for the 12 Days of Christmas. Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome to the 12 Stocks for the 12 Days of Christmas. Today we're joined by James Short, CEO of Celadon. Merry Christmas, James, and welcome.
Merry Christmas, Phil and Kevin. Thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. So 2023 has been quite the year for Celadon, starting in January with the registration for Good Manufacturing Practice, GMP. March saw the Home Office license being successfully updated to allow the commercial sale of your high THC product. May brought your inaugural supply contract win with a leading UK medicinal cannabis company. August saw LVL Health, your private pain clinic, receiving approval from the NHS Research Ethics Committee to roll out the non-cancer chronic pain clinical trial for up to 5,000 patients. And just recently, a new sales contract with a European medicinal cannabis company having the potential to generate revenue to Celadon of up to £26 million of product, 8.7 million annually over the 3-year term. Sounds like quite the year in review, James.
It isn't, it hasn't been an overnight success. This has been 5 years in the making. It's just, now that, as you said, we've got our approval to sell the product into the market, it's started to bring to fruition, all the hard work that the team has been doing over the 5-year period. With the sales that you've just mentioned, we announced it a couple of weeks ago. We actually sent our first shipment a few weeks ago. That invoice is now gone. Our second shipment has now been invoiced as well with the second client. So, yeah, it's really good. And I came home that evening, the Wednesday, and I just felt like everything had drained from me because it's reality now. It's been such hard work. Every business is, we're not mourning, we're not complaining, but it's really good. And what has started to happen as well for the kids, we've had an awful lot of inbound inquiries as well, which is really good, really positive. So, yeah, incredible year. Lots more gone on as well, by the way.
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot more behind the scenes than you're able to tell us. But first of all, just deal with the money that you raised recently. Obviously, things still need sort of kitted out there in the facility that you have, which I visited during the summer, which was impressive in itself, but obviously needs to just be completed so that you can up the amount that you can actually produce yourself. So just give us an idea how that money will be spent, Jim.
As we announced to the market a couple of months ago, we drew $1 million of equity. We announced to the market we'd like to raise 10 million, of which potentially 5 of equity to capture some of the EIS money, and the other 5 as convertible loan note to capture some of the VCT money. Now, if we don't raise the 10, it's not the end of the world. It's just if we do raise the 10, it means we can speed up our production and go and capture more of these orders. We've since done another announcement we completed last week, I think it was, for another 2 million, which really shows strength to, again, what we're doing. Raising capital in this current market is difficult at best, but, we are managing to do it. And we're managing to raise the equity at the current share price. So we're getting there. We're also looking at other opportunities. So, as you say, Kevin, part of the money is going to go to further build out our facility. We already are live, part of it. So it's to further build out. So what we're looking at is, do we raise it as a convertible, all of it, or do we look at some asset finance? And there's, the asset finance today is relatively cheap money compared to debt because of the higher interest rates. So we're exploring all opportunities of how we bring capital on at the right price that's right for the shareholders to then just keep going capturing, some of the market that we've got. There's one other interesting project we've been working on, which I'm only allowed to say so much. We have now signed heads of terms. This is with a European company that we are looking at licensing some of our IP technology for growing the product. And with that, we will transfer some of our genetics to them in Europe, or then to grow the license for us to then allow us to fulfill our European contract. So again, we're looking at opportunities that if it takes us longer to raise capital to fit out our facility, well, we'll supply to the German contract through our European IP partner. And that does a number of things. It gives us a lot, hopefully we'll be able to bring that revenue online even earlier than what we said back in the next year. But the other thing is it gets around this Brexit thing as well. It keeps costs down. The Brexit, whether it's cannabis or widgets it's selling, the Brexit thing is still not fully baked out. It is slow sending products into you. So that's the other reason why we're looking at that opportunity. So watch this space for Q1 next year. Hopefully we can get that deal over the line.
Good. No, I mean, we chose Celadon as one of the stocks of 2024 for Rose PR for a few reasons, but just explain to the investors the two very distinct parts of Celadon, because we have, I think, the flower situation, growing, selling, getting distribution for this. But the bit that really should excite people, I think, is the pharma side of the business. So just explain to people how that sits.
Yeah, so what I'd like to do, Kevin, is if you can imagine a triangle, and if we look at the top of the triangle, we've got Celadon Pharmaceuticals. We've been very clear from the day I founded the business or co-founded it. We are a pharmaceutical company. We're not a cannabis company. We're a pharma company. If you look at the pyramid, if you look at the left-hand side, the bottom left, that side of the business is to produce what the industry calls an API, which is an active pharma ingredients. So our licenses allows us to grow the product, either sell the flower or extract it and sell the API. And we sell that into the, let's call it the pharmacy world, i.e. big pharma, small pharma, whichever pharma. That's the contract we are starting to sell. So that's our, one of our core strengths in our business. And that's hugely revenue generative in the years to come. The opportunity in the UK alone is colossal. If you look at 8 million people with chronic pain in the UK, use in our facility, Kevin, it's huge. And we still can only produce enough, for 50, 60, 70,000 patients. So the opportunity is incredible. So that side of the business will just keep growing and growing and growing. Excuse the pun, not just keep growing flower, but growing in size and in revenue and market share, and that's whether it's UK, Europe, or, shipping stuff around the world. That side of the business is what we call our API side of the business.
And Jim, just to put some color on that flower, pun intended, what is the sort of margin that you're likely to get with economies of scale on those growing and then selling of the plants?
As you've seen, we are growing indoors. Some people say, your margins are squeezed when you're indoors and think, it's cheaper outside because the sun's free and things like that. Again, look at what I said at the beginning. Triangle, we're pharmaceutical. The products we are producing are the highest of quality. And that's not me just saying that. Our clients are saying that. We are managing to get a premium for our product. I don't want to mention how much per gram, but we are getting a premium for it. And the reason for that is because we are growing it, producing it under a very, very high control environment, which you've seen for your own eyes, Kevin. It isn't a glass house. I'm not knocking glass house. They have a place in this world. You can relate it to the car industry. You've got your Rolls Royce and you've got your, let's call it Mercedes. There's thousands of Mercedes, but there's less roads. And we're in that Rolls Royce space. So our margins are more higher. We're low volume, high margin. I don't want to be giving you 60, 78% margins because, when you start scaling, obviously you get better scale of economy. And now that we've got our license for our facility, we are already looking at a number of other potential facilities where we will grow in them facilities and bring the product back to what we call mothership for processing. Again, that will help our margins. So I hope that answered your question, Kevin, as accurate as I'm allowed to.
Yes, I understand that you have things preventing you giving us the overall, but it gives people a good picture. Okay, so that's the left point of the triangle. So please now explain the other part of the triangle.
So the right-hand part of the triangle is what what the industry calls that true pharma side. And within that true pharma side, you've got your standard stage 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials, which takes a long time and costs lots of money. And on the peripheral of that, you've got other things such as the LVL program that we've got. It's the only UK government-approved program for cannabinoids to study pain. I won't go on about all the benefits on this call because it'll take hours, but it really does allow us to open up the market and give the evidence to the regulators that they have asked for, that hopefully they will reimburse for. So that's an evidence-based trial, which we are looking to launch that next year. We already did a soft launch, what we call a beta. We've already had a number of patients on it. The results have been astonishing, not only just for pain, but for sleep. And every single patient that's on it has reduced their dependency on opioids. Like some are on zero. Some have gone back to work. It's frightening. And they've only been on it 6-9 months.
And we know, don't we, that if you're not sleeping well as having pain, it just exacerbates the situation. So if you get good sleep, it removes a lot of the symptoms, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's lots of studies going on in Canada and around the world, US at the forefront of it, around PTSD and stress. Sleep is a big issue. We all get agitated with it. And on top of that, you're pumping all these 30 to 40 tablets a day into you. I've sat with some ex-rugby guys, and they're on 60-odd tablets a day. Their terminology is, we're rattling. That's their term. Rattling, yeah. And we get them on this, and when they're down to 3 or 4 a day, it's incredible. But for me, when I speak to these patients, it's just the change in their life. And, the partners ringing me and saying, one of them said, thanks for giving me my wife back. And it just took me back, and I had to make a joke of it. I said, no problem. Do you want another wife? I've got one. Yeah, it was just, it's astonishing. So that's one part of the trial in that triangle. But to further expand on that, we've got 3 diseases that we're looking at. One is our primary. I can't mention it on the call, unfortunately, but hopefully, we will be announcing it next year because we want to launch it next year. We're working with a prominent UK university, and they'll dual work with one in the US. We have the formulation, we have the delivery mechanism, we have some IP around it. We know it works. We've been working on it for 2 years in the background. We want to launch it next year. Now, we're fortunate in the UK, without going a bit too technical, we're fortunate that we can launch it as a special whilst we're going through this 5, 7, 10 years process of clinical trial. The real huge opportunity for us is to go down that FDA US clinical trial as well at some point. Now, whether we do that on our own or whether we partner with another company, big pharma or whatever, we're exploring that at the moment. Mm. Another disease, and it's a shame, it's always harsh when you call it the disease, but that's what the medical fraternity call it. Another disease that we own 20% of a company called Kingdom Therapeutics. Amazing company. We've been with them now, I think, 2 and a bit years. Liz, the CEO, is doing a fantastic job. They've gone through phase 1. And this is for autism in minors. They've managed to get some IP. It's actually pending at the moment. So that, again, is a unique opportunity for Celadon. We took a stake in that company. And if that trial is successful, it will be a Celadon product that they will use moving forward. The API extracted oil that we've got a license for, we will put that into that formulation, and that's what we use. So that is the true pharma side, Kevin. But to do
so give people an idea, I mean, just for the sake of argument, in terms of the valuation of something that you were able to do for, let's say, for the autism, I mean, what is that worth? I mean, what could that market be worth in the UK and the US?
So it's about an $8 billion market. And remember, this is for minors. So it's a small cohort. It's not quite an orphan drug. It's a small cohort. But if you look at chronic pain of 8 million alone in the UK, that's a $20-30 billion industry. But what I will do, Kevin, is give you an example of, Celadon, this isn't new to the world. Celadon hasn't come up with some magic wand around clinical trials and valuations. But I'll give you the closest example I can, and it's a British company called GW Pharma. Lots of people talk about them. I always do. And that's mainly because God knows what they went through 20 years ago when they were founded, because I know what we've had to go through. And remember, it was a different legal framework 20 years ago. So GW, British company, they were on, I think they went on about 2004. They were bobbing along. They had to do full clinical trials because they couldn't operate in the specials like we can now. So they didn't have the left-hand side of our triangle. They only had the right-hand side. So they were constantly having to raise big money. In 2013, they were on a couple $100 million value, pre-ordered on NASDAQ. And within that 12 months, they had 6 children with an indication for epilepsy. Not approval. They didn't get approval at this point. And they went up to $1.4 billion. 2014, fast forward, they were at I think it was something like 1.8 billion, something like that. And then they were teetering around about the 4 billion mark from 2016 onwards. And then they got acquired in 2021 for $7.2 billion. And just to give you some stats on that, they got that because they got an approval for epilepsy, FDA approval. They got a number of other approvals, but FDA US. Today, they have 23,000 patients. Sounds a lot, but it's not in the grand scheme of things, with 700 million of revenue, and they sold out for 7.2 billion in 2021. So they're now, unfortunately, not a great British company. They're now a great US company.
Yeah.
So you can see they were at 200 on AIM, dual listed, exited for 7.2 with, reasonably good revenue, but we could get that out of our flour. So, that's an example, Kevin, of the potential if you get a licensed approved drug. Now, as I say, Kingdom, that's a partnership, but it will be our product. The other diseases that we're coming out with next year, we're going to launch it on our own with a view then to potentially get a partner. We are talking to a number of the big guys. I can't mention them on this call, that are potentially interested in partnering with us on this.
Yeah. I just want to go back to the LVL health thing, Jim, the NHS, because obviously I think it's like 5 years after medical cannabis has been legalized, but it still hasn't funded those clinical trials. And then obviously you come along and you've got this 5,000 patients, obviously the first clinical trial of its kind. You mentioned you've had a bit of a soft launch going on, and you've seen the result have been very impressive. What could come out of this? Is it likely that, or potentially that in the future, that the NHS, if it's all approved, that they would look to you to supply them in going forward? I mean, what could come out of this?
I think that's the best case, the best outcome. The trial has been designed in conjunction with the government guidelines, NICE's guidelines. So what we don't want to do is turn up in 2 years or 3 years' time and say, here's a bunch of data, and say, well, actually, that's not what we wanted. So it's being designed within the guidelines. I think that's the best case, reimbursement. Yeah. The worst case is the trial will open up the UK market for awareness for private prescription, and that is still massive. There are people there. When I've studied this market even more after over 5 years, there are people there that not only want it, but actually need it, because the current medication they're on, i.e. the opioids, isn't working. So they need an alternative. The doctors want an alternative in their toolbox to prescribe. Yeah. The government is saying, stop prescribing opioids to the doctors, and the doctors saying, well, that's good and well, but what have I got? So we're hoping that a cannabinoid can be one of, not the perfect, not the be-all and all or golden bullet, but we're hoping that it will be one of the alternatives that they can prescribe. But if we can just pick up, Phil, on one of your comments that, a lot of people get mixed up. I don't know if it's trying to beat the government or not. We never try and beat them up. There's two elements here. There's the government reimbursing, and then there's the government backing research and development. They're two separate things. LVL took 3 years and cost nearly £5 million to get approval. It shouldn't have took that long, and it certainly shouldn't have cost that much, because that money could have gone into, funding and getting it out there earlier. So that's an issue. But we as a commercial company had to make the decision, let's just go and do it, because we can't wait for these government grants. If you look at the US, to date, the US in 2022 deployed $200 million in R&D for cannabis alone. The UK has not even put £10 in. We don't know how much. They keep saying they are.
Do you think there's some? Do you think what is the reticence? Do you think they're just so used to prescribing these opioid painkillers by the GPs that they're not interested in running? I mean, I'm just trying to think. Because I know that.
Yeah, it's honestly, there's not one answer. I wish I could sit here, Phil, and say this is the. I think it's the UK has been going through a complete flux, as every country is, because of COVID, and we're seeing now the NHS strikes and things like that. So I've sat with regulators, and honestly, they're not anti it. They're really not. I've sat on, I've spoken to the chairman of the NHS Ethics Committee. They're not anti, they are for it. Mm-hmm. They're just very cautious. We're a very cautious country.
Yeah.
Well, it proves it. It's took us 4 years to get our licensing.
Yeah, I think the Home Office have also been pretty negative, haven't they? On warning of regular use can lead to dependence and mental health problems. From what I've seen, which is it doesn't fill you with confidence, as in when they're coming out, because they control it ultimately, right?
No, I don't. That's the MHRA. Sorry, Phil. That's the medical, the Home Office are around safety, theft, and security. Okay. It's the MHRA. But again, yeah, you get doctors that are saying this, but go back in history, go back 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. People were scared of getting on the first train because it went 15 mile an hour. Look at what speed we're going at now. It will change, but you've got to, what I've learned in 30 years of building businesses, certainly in the UK, you have to try your hardest to work with these regulators. You can't keep going in and beating them up and saying, you've got to try and work with them. And it's frustrating. You know, I have had sleepless nights when I've got shareholders saying, when are you going to get this license to get to revenue? And I'm talking to a civil servant saying, well, yeah, we'll let you know how it goes. And, you know, and don't bother me till January now because I can owe me Christmas holidays, you know, but you can't fight with them. You've just got to work with them. It's frustrating. What's frustrating for me is, and I keep telling our team, every single day we are not producing product for these patients. It's another day that patient isn't having a good quality of life. That's it for me. That's our core driving our business. Yes, I know shareholders want me to get to revenue. We're going as fast and hard as we can. But for me, the best drive to motivate our team is every day that patient isn't getting a product, whether it's from us or somebody else, there's another day that's not good quality of life. We've actually got some of the patients coming in January to meet some of our team as well, just to show them, you know, that is our drive. Patient first, product after, nailing it.
Very good. So going backwards again from all the different things you said about this other company that listed on AIM and then went to the US, do you see that the natural place for Celadon is going to be probably as a big pharma, probably on NASDAQ?
Obviously, again, I've got to watch how far I go here, but I don't think there's any CEO in the UK, certainly not on AIM or mainly the main market, not thought at any point, do we need to look at potentially dual listing or relisting in the UK? And we, as Celadon, have certainly been looking at that. I was in New York a couple of months ago. You know, I went to the New York Stock Exchange, I met the NASDAQ guys. I met a number of big funding offices, you know, KKR, BlackRock, Fidelities of this world, DK. And honestly, it was like night and day. You know, I'm not having to go at our UK investor group, but it was like night and day. I was sat there and it's because, as I said at the beginning, Kevin, pyramid, pharmaceutical at the top. Yes, the risk of cannabis, they don't like cannabis, and actually these big funds can't invest in cannabis, but lo and behold, they can invest in a pharmaceutical company that deals with cannabis. So most of them, if not all of them, had a position or still do have in what was GW Pharma, that's now Jazz Pharma. So they've been on that journey, they've seen that journey. So when I went in to meet them, it's, oh, you're a Jazz number 2 and you're British. You know, it was fantastic. There was only one out of, I think, 12 meetings that weren't sort of with us. So we are certainly looking at it. You know, the thing that we need now, a lot more cash on balance sheet to really go and capture. We've proven we can do it. We're proving every day we're doing it. But it is certainly something we're looking at from a valuation standpoint, from a capital standpoint. But just as important, the US is the largest pharmaceutical market in the world apart from China. So some of these diseases we're addressing, what an opportunity for Celadon in the US. Just like Jazz, as I mentioned, GW, Jazz now owns them. You know, however, thousands of customers, predominantly US, 700 million revenue they've got. It just seems to make a lot of sense that we should be looking at a US presence, you know, whether that's just to FDA approval or whether it's a dual listing or something like that. We are certainly exploring it. As every CEO, I think, not everyone, but, you know, most of us should be.
Yeah, I mean, it seems the logical way to go, let's put it that way. So, I mean, you got to understand.
It's a proven trodden path, Kevin, isn't it? You know, not everyone does it. You know, not everybody's done it, but there are a few. But in the pharma world, you know, a lot of the UK farmers, head office here, but they're listed in the US. They're doing it for a reason.
They're doing it for a reason, sadly, because, you know, the valuation really doesn't stack up in the UK. That's the problem.
No, and it's difficult. You know, and people keep saying to me, oh, don't worry about your valuation. But I say, that's good and well, but you go and pitch and try and raise money then. when your valuations are going backwards or wherever, and if you just look at the example that was out a few weeks ago, Hotel Chocolate, great company, they were working hard, eBay, everything, they were doing it, smashing it. The valuations come back, they were trading at 200 million value, whatever it was, and Mars came along and took them out at 500 million. It's such a shame. I really don't want the UK to miss out, but I can't change the UK market. We're certainly not big enough. One thing that I really would like to emphasize, and I was with a couple of the parliamentary guys not long ago, and they asked me, what could they do if they got into power? And I said, do not miss the opportunity that's in front of us as a UK company for R&D for cannabinoids within medical, or not just cannabinoids, psilocybins, anything botanical. Do not miss that opportunity. I don't think they can really fix the capital market bit, and I know they're going to try, and hopefully they'll, but that's going to take a long time to bake in. I don't think that's going to be an overnight success, even if, they relax on the pension schemes and things like that. It's going to take a while. But from a pharma R&D point of view, we've got some incredible skill set in the UK from a pharma stance.
Yeah, let's hope they use it. So one of the reasons why we chose Celadon as one of our picks of 2024 was undoubtedly because of the pharma angle in this stock. I think the profitability that you will attract because of the sales of these products is going to be pretty sensational as well. But the reality is that the really, really big play here is that the pharma play, the fact that once you have these things, they'll be licensed for X number of years, and you will just print money after that situation.
Yeah, and obviously I'm not going to disagree with you, but, as I say, I'm of an age now where we're building lots of businesses. I'm old school. I like to see revenue and profit, and I'm not built just for full clinical trials. But the fortunate thing is we can get to that revenue profit, and we can do that clinical side on the other side. So we're not only creating further IP, but you're absolutely right, Kevin. This in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's a multi-billion pound business. It's unless something catastrophic goes wrong, I just can't see it not be, because there is a need, as I've said, there's a clear need for an alternative, and we are part of filling that gap of the alternative.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Kevin, was a lot of people said to me, how are you so sure? And I said, well, this product's been around for hundreds and thousands of years. It's just been buried for the last 80 years because, all sorts of politics and things like that. No, it's such an opportunity. It's not the golden bullet. It's not going to fix every disease, but the opportunities that are in front of us and other companies. And that's where I hope I'm around long enough to see it be one of them great British companies, of old. GSK, Pfizer's, things like that.
I'm sure you will be. Okay, this is the 12 stocks of Christmas. So the question I'm going to pose to you now is, what is the most unusual, crazy place that you've spent Christmas Day in?
Oh, gosh. Don't know, really. I'm pretty damn conservative and boring, unfortunately. I suppose Lapland on a bloody sledge, being cold, freezing cold.
Well, that's not conservative at all.
Being pulled by the Huskies.
Yeah. But the funniest thing, just before we finished, was my son was, I don't know, say 8, something like that. We'd finished, and it was nice. It was great for the kids. It was sort of the last year he would believe in Christmas. It wasn't mine. I still believe in it. And the funniest part about it is we finished the holiday. We got back on the bus to go to the plane. And there's an old boy in front talking away, and my son's looking at him going, I recognise that voice. And it was actually Father Christmas Day, and he's almost serious. So this Chinese guy, who actually, I'll never forget, he had a pharmacy, and he's looking at me as well saying, how do we shut this guy up?
Yeah. Brilliant.
That's a good story.
Yeah, so he nearly let the cat out of the bag too early. So I suppose that one, the rest of it, I'm pretty damn boring. I've got to admit.
Very good. And then we're on the food theme podcast as well, the roast. What is your guilty pleasure? I know you like to prepare a roast. We've talked about that, and you enjoy the time in the kitchen. But what is the sort of one bit of food that you look forward to having maybe once a year at Christmas, a bit of a guilty pleasure?
I suppose it's the Christmas pudding. You're stuffed, aren't you? And you still manage to try and get a bit of that down.
Get the brandy sauce on it as well, as rich as possible.
Yeah, but I love that. Yeah, bit of salmon bread, glass of champagne, even though I don't really like champagne. But, a couple of sips of that. And as I say, I'm pretty damn boring, really. It's basic stuff, but I do like my turkey.
Very good. All right. Well, on that note, we'll just wish you all the best. Look forward to welcoming you back onto the podcast in 2024. And we wish you every success in the future, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, lads. And thanks for your support, honestly. I know how hard you've been helping us and championing us on. And thanks for coming out, Kevin. And I knew once you'd come out, the light bulb would go on and what you saw, the quality and the scale that we're operating at. So thanks again for your support.
Absolutely.
No problems. And hopefully Phil's going to go and see.
I'll be up
see you in the new year as well, so you can see the thing in operation, which I didn't.
Yeah.
But, I have great.
Just on that one, Kevin, it weren't that you didn't see an operation. We couldn't let you in. We have, we have live clients.
Failed the background checks, didn't he?
No, he didn't. And because all the products contracted, we try and restrict people going into the grow areas. I don't want to be derogative, coming from a contamination point of view.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I can be contaminated.
You certainly smell it.
Brings all them bugs and viruses from Egypt, doesn't they, usually?
That's right.
All right, on that note, we'll say James Short, CEO of Celadon Pharmaceuticals. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.